Greetings and salutations, this is Brian from Mechbladestudios. Thanksgiving was a little while ago where we all gave thanks to all that we have and got together with the family for a nice meal. Therefore, I figured we could look at a franchise known for its voracious consumption of food. Yeah, we're going there. In all seriousness though, the first half of Season 3 of the Attack on Titan anime is wrapped up, so I figured we could take a look at the part of the franchise I alluded to all the way back in my review of the second main game adaptation, the live-action films. Despite the implication that this is going to be a full-on roast of the films, I don't think they're that bad. You heard me. They've got obvious problems to be sure, ignoring obvious deviations from canon, but looking at them on their own, they sort of hold their own. Well, allow me to explain, starting with part 1, simply called Attack on Titan. Starting with aesthetics, the film looks great. Japanese films don't quite have the massive budgets that American films have, but a good majority of the effects here look very convincing. The Titans in particular look terrifying and occasionally derpy, just like their canon counterparts, but more so. I mean, it doesn't top the running Titan in terms of derpiness, but still. The set design is cool, looking dirty, war-torn, and post-apocalyptic, but slightly modernized for reasons we'll get to later. What doesn't carry over nearly as well are character designs. Yes, everyone is Japanese instead of German. They did that because this was made and released in Japan for Japanese audiences. This doesn't affect the plot. That said, they could have at least made some of the haircuts look the same as in canon. Let's move on before we get into a comment war. Despite the cinematography being quite good, the color palette is just depressing. It looks appropriately like a war zone, but meanwhile the show managed to be grim and gritty while still being very colorful. The movie just looks very gray most of the time. Blood doesn't even look right in some shots. The green screen sequences are inconsistent. Sometimes, like these shots by the wall, they look great, but other times they look rather dodgy. The Colossal Titan looks absolutely amazing, portrayed by a huge puppet enhanced with CG. Eren's Titan looks fairly good as well, at least the body does. His head looks a bit wonky though. The worst effect sequences are those that show the use of omnidirectional movement gear. That's just bad. Other than that, I'd say the action is pretty solid and well paced when it actually happens. The plot is a remix of what happens in the first parts of Season 1, where Eren longs to see the outside world. The Colossal Titan wrecks the outermost wall, letting the Titans into the city and eat everyone inside, forcing all survivors to the middle wall. 2 years later, the military goes on a mission to seal the outermost wall. Some notable differences include how instead of Eren's mom getting eaten, Mikasa supposedly does before turning up later. Technology is such that civilians live like everyone does in the show, while the government and military have access to slightly more advanced weapons and vehicles. Titans can reproduce on their own, for some creepy reason, and some characters are replaced. For the most part though, if you've seen the first dozen episodes of the show, you've seen this movie, and that's unfortunately what drags it down. It's too much of a retread of the show or manga to be interesting, but strays too far away from the show's and manga's charm and tone to draw in fans. Most of the characters are actually rather faithful adaptations of their canon counterparts, even if they don't always look like it. Eren acts like Eren, Jon acts like Jon, Sasha acts like Sasha, and Hanji, or Hans here for some reason, is 100% accurate. Armin is mostly intact, though most of his intellect is portrayed by being a tech guy, though his tactical knowledge did make it in some capacity. Ironically, despite looking the most accurate, Mikasa is the one canon character that got modified the most, and not for the better. I'm not saying the original Mikasa is an expertly written character, but she had a bit. She's super powerful and was eternally devoted to Eren, as odd as it may come across at times. Here, well, you know how Weiss got turned into a trophy in Ruby Volume 2? That's more or less what happens here. She gets left outside trying to save a baby and apparently gets eaten, only to somehow get saved by not Levi and trained to become sort of strong. She's pissed at Eren for leaving her behind, but Eren never bothers to explain that he couldn't get out because the other people in the inn wouldn't let him out. Even her cruel world line is taken completely out of context, changing his meaning completely. It's one thing to modify a character to make it better fit an adaptation, but it's another to just slap a name on a scarf on a completely different character and call it a day. That said, the movie just changes the confusing canon relationship between Eren and Mikasa from being adopted siblings to being a couple. It's not communicated very well. Some characters, meanwhile, are replaced or removed completely. This can either go well, like Sonagi, this bizarrely strong dude that can axe titans, or it can go badly, like Hyana, who tells Eren she's a single mother, tries to bed him, and then gets eaten. in a span of like 3 minutes. Shikishima requires a bit more elaboration later, but I never minded him that much. He's obviously supposed to be Levi, but a bit more smarmy, but later developments justify why he isn't. He is close enough for now. It also just seems like nobody in this unit seems to be friends with each other. Some people try to be, but they're always just kind of shrugged off. But meanwhile, in the show and manga, you can definitely tell these people are becoming friends, even if they really don't like each other at first. Here, they're just indifferent to each other at best. Shiro Sagasu's soundtrack doesn't really stand out here, though you can occasionally hear references to Hiroyuki Sawano's score from the show, which is a nice touch. Overall, I give Attack on Titan Part 1 a 5 out of 10. It's a great looking, but ultimately hollow and boring watch until maybe the Eren Titan debut. It both plays things safe and takes risks in the wrong places. Does it stay in the spirit of the series? For the most part, sure, but it doesn't have the charm and camaraderie of the canon series. It's not bad, just very underwhelming. However, you'd be surprised to know that the sequel, Attack on Titan: The End of the World, is actually quite the improvement. Spoilers ahead, by the way. End of the World starts with a flashback showing Dr. Jaeger, I don't even know if that's his and Eren's name in this, but for simplicity's sake, let's call them that, injecting Eren with Titan serum in his lab. The authorities show up, abduct Eren's parents, and burn down the lab. In the present day, Eren wakes up and finds he's about to be executed for being a Titan. Before getting shot, the armored Titan of all things shows up and abducts Eren. He wakes up, again, in a white room where Shikishima claims he saved him from the armored Titan and reveals that Titans are humans injected with a cell expansion serum originated from a modern-era government black project explaining the downed helicopters, assault rifles, rocket launchers, which eventually turned into a virus, sending all of humanity into chaos and war until the survivors built the walls. The government, meanwhile, banned all technological advancements for the civilians, keeping it all to themselves for their own leisure or for killing rebels. Eren then joins Shikishima in a plot to overthrow the government, while the remaining protagonists, led by Armin, seek the bomb from the beginning of the first film to execute the plan to repair the wall. Brief manga spoilers ahead. Skip to here if you don't want to hear it. Back when this first came out, this seemed like the hardest swerve away from canon, but in hindsight, it's actually rather accurate to what would actually later happen in the manga. It's still not exact, but either way, because of this, I think the film's a lot more interesting than the first. This was uncharted territory. Nobody knew what was going to happen, and even now, rewatching it after these developments, I still think it holds up pretty well. It's funny how the parts of this little corner of the franchise are its unique idiosyncrasies instead of how well it adapts to source material. But wait, I hear you ask. Didn't you just eviscerate Bionicle the game for not following canon? Well, that game was trying to follow established canon as close as possible, but it couldn't do that because of deadlines and thus got a ton of stuff wrong without justifying why these differences exist. Here, one can argue that the narrative had to be changed to fit two movies, and it did so in the spirit of the source material, even getting stuff right that we didn't even know would be right, and that characters had to be changed for marketing purposes, which was less successful. The ending's pretty cool too, but that would spoil this, the anime, and the manga at once, so I'll leave it at that. The characters are mostly the same, though Mikasa acts a little bit more like herself this time, and all characters in general seem more comfortable in their roles, and even seem more friendly with each other. Shikishima in particular, despite replacing not one, but 3 different characters, is probably the most interesting of the bunch. He was unpredictable and in his own twisted way genuinely cared for humanity and his brother Eren. He's kind of a lech when it comes to Mikasa though. His Titan design is awesome. I wish I had the canon version's mouth plate, but damn is he cool. It's not that much of a spoiler. When he first appears, look how he looks at Mikasa. Kubal similarly replaces 3 characters, but only in terms of positions. He's an authoritarian jackass that tends to sacrifice his men or just straight up kill them if they get in his way. He's a walking example of the corruption that appeared inside the walled world. Unfortunately, that's the long and short of his character before getting to the finale, which, while that revelation is still neat, it still doesn't add to his character at all. The action is quite epic as well, with less running away from Titans and more actual battles. There's a bit more color this time around, and a ton of shots look amazing. The soundtrack even sticks out a bit more. The whole movie, despite being quite gory and depressing at times, is more fun and lively as a whole. Also, I don't know where else to put this, but a good chunk of the cast and crew on this film would go on to work on Shin Godzilla. Just a little fun fact. Overall, I give Attack on Titan: End of the World a 7 out of 10. I am dead serious. It's not a perfect adaptation by any means and still carries over a lot of the issues the first film had, like iffy effects and such, but it seems a lot more confident in its new direction and, ironically enough, sticks closer to what made the source material great: action, camaraderie, and mystery. In order to understand this, you should still watch the first film, which again is not bad. Averaging the 2 films only makes this mini franchise only a 6 out of 10, but that's still grounds for me to recommend it. It's an interesting, awesome-looking take on a franchise at its best, and a novelty at worst. It's far from being the worst anime adaptation ever made. If you're a purist, you probably won't like it, but if you're an open-minded fan with 3 hours to kill, I'd check them out. So that's it for me for now. What do you guys think? Did you like either of these movies? Which one, if any, did you like better? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, leave a like and subscribe for more reviews of anime, video games, and movies. Also, hit that bell icon so you know exactly when a new video goes up. Thanks for watching. This is Brian from Mechbladestudios, signing off.